What's up, guys? S.W.E Racing here, back at it again. We're working on the project car. Means we got this weekend off and all of next week. Figured we'd get a little something done on this. Now this car used to be a 4-link car. See these mounts right here? Okay, there would be normally a cross member that goes across here that these link bars would tie up into. And then you got your two trailing arm links down here. So that makes it a 4-link car. So it's been converted over to a 3-link. So instead of those lower trailing arms like normal, it has swedge tubes that's adjustable. You can adjust forward to aft and both sides. So you can put rear steer, understeer, whatever in there you want. And then you run a top link bar from here all the way up there to the frame, and that's your 3rd link. That adjusts your pinion angle and stuff like that, and also you can adjust angles on this to accomplish different things on how much roll the rear end's going to do when you get on the gas. So you don't want your pinion getting too low unless you're on dirt. Then you want it low because it'll make you loose. And then on a 3-link, you have to have a Panhard bar. Now this is a Panhard bar mount that I put on the rear end. Okay. The thing with the Panhard bar on an old 4-link car is you see how the frame curves up and over the rear end. You can see how the frame's been notched out so for ride height so you can get the rear end up in there into the frame. Okay. But on a 3-link car, you have to have something to mount this Panhard bar to on the right side frame rail. Now, with that curve, it makes it about impossible. You have to go in and put in a mount like I've done here, okay? So like this, I never throw anything away hardly. Car gets wrecked, I get a wrecked car or something like that. I usually cut it up and save pieces of it. This is actually off another late model that I had at one time. And this is the Panhard bar mount for that late model. And you can see on the late model, the rear end actually sat above this tube, so this frame rail ran all the way underneath the rear end. That's not the case on like a 4-link car. So what I've done is I've cut it at this angle of the frame and then welded it into the frame, which gives me this forward support to attach the Panhard bar to. And this is the adjuster for the Panhard bar. So this is going to bolt in right there. And then you can adjust roll center as well as moving the rear end from one side to the other. And that keeps the rear end stationary in the car from left to right. So it's what ties the rear end back into the car so you're not getting the rear end sliding sideways, and also does all your roll center. Okay. So yeah, that worked out pretty good. Now this car is a 4-corner weight jack car. All 4 corners have a coil spring with a jack bolt through it. So you can adjust cross, wedge, ride height, so on and so forth. Now that we've got all that fabbed in, this car is going to get sandblasted and repainted. So I have to get all the fab work done, excuse me, before we sandblast it and have it repainted. And I want all that done before it even gets sandblasted, because the longer you leave metal sitting exposed, you can get flash rusting and stuff like that. That's what all this stuff is, exposed metal. That's why it's getting sandblasted and completely repainted. But I don't want to be doing fab work after it's sandblasted and give it a chance to re-rust. So as soon as it gets sandblasted, I want to shoot it. Okay. Then we come up here to the firewall. The firewall, you can see now, is pretty much vertical straight up and down. Before, I don't know why, but it had a weird funky curve in it. All down through here was curved. It's still a little curved at the bottom, which we're going to address that too. But now you can see it's a lot flatter and straighter. Okay, so like right here, the firewall was clear up here, and they had it tack welded. So I cut that tack welds back, and I pulled this whole top piece back to where now it's straight, and then re-tack welded it. Another thing I don't like is when they built the firewall, it's a really nice job on building this firewall, but they left most of the stock firewall behind it. That's just extra weight up in the front that I don't want, don't need. So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to trim the extra layer off of the stock firewall, and we'll just stick with the fabbed firewall. You come around this side. Now you can see that dent in there. We'll address that when we get that back side off and get that all straightened up. Okay, now that notched out area is for your distributor. So, I mean, they did a really good job on building this firewall. I have no idea why they left the other firewall behind it. That's just more weight. Another thing that they had done, if you watched the previous video on this car, they had cut the shock mounts off. So I went through and cleaned off all the nubbings, marked it out where the shock mounts need to go. And then I took one of my factory, well, not factory, I wouldn't say factory, but aftermarket shock mounts that are bolt-on that you can buy from Speedway. That would be one of these. Okay. I don't like running bolt-on parts. First of all, if you take this and you bolt that on there, and then you mount your shock to here, that's a lot of pressure. So eventually, after time, this is going to get twisted and rolled unless you actually throw tack welds in here to make sure it doesn't move. Now, what's the point of having a bolt on if you're welding it anyways? Might as well just weld it. It's never going to go nowhere that way. Okay, so these, I'm not sure how much they run. I'm guessing probably 40 bucks. And so by the time you buy two of them, you're in 80. You ain't met the $100 threshold for free shipping. So you're either going to spend some more money on something to where you get to 100 bucks, or you're going to pay shipping. I don't see the point in doing that when, if you got any kind of fabricating mind, this is fairly simple to make. I mean, in 5 minutes, going back to saving scrap stuff, that same piece that you seen on the trailing arm mount, here's some more of that car right here. Okay, they've already got holes or pipe welded into it where they've drilled it out and welded it in, and their idea was for mounting weight off of the frame rail. That's a great idea. My idea, this one right here, is one that I cut off. Okay, so now you look in there, I've also cut the tube down. So you compare that, move that out of the way. That to that, other than it's rusty, you got the same thing. Same thickness. So then what I did is that was the first one I was going to make, and I didn't like it because, as you can see, I cut the wrong side. I should have cut this side off, leaving that hole up higher, because by the time that gets on and you cut your shape out, that lines up a lot closer to the one that you buy from Speedway, and this is going to give you less travel by using this one. Okay, so I went and I had another piece of that left over, so I went and cut the other side. Before I even cut it, though, I did take the one that I had bought and I put it on there, lined up the holes, and then I traced all the way around it. I also took it like that and I traced the inside to get the dimensions for the size of the tubing so that it wraps around the tubing. Okay? So now this is the finished one. Same exact thing. Ready to go. Put it on there. Weld it up. You're done. Cost me nothing. It's a little rusty inside there. I'll probably hit that with the wire wheel brush, clean that out. But the end results is I've got a new shock mount that I spent absolutely nothing on that was out of scrap parts. So if you guys use your head a little bit, you can save yourself a lot of money. So when you're on a budget, that's the kind of stuff that you got to do. I mean, it took me 5 minutes to cut that out with a thin cut and a floppy to shape it, and it's ready to go. So, yeah, that's a good deal. So, yeah, so now the next step is to actually locate them on the chassis where you want them. Common rule is people say they want a 30-degree angle on their shock from the control arm up to where it's mounted. So ideally that's what I try to strive for. It's not so critical if you're off a degree or two or whatever. And sometimes you have to kind of adjust for, as you know, the spring's going to be in here. And you don't want it hitting here or in here. So right now, that's at full extension, meaning that's as far as in as it's going to be. Which, if you take into account for the spring, I think it's going to be too close there myself. So I'm going to try and change that angle a little bit. Roll it down just a hair. And by doing that, how I'm doing that is just by turning this mount. So you can rotate the mount up. And that moves it in. Now if I push the mount down, see, it moves it out. So I think the original marks where they were is pretty close. See, now you got, if you go on this side, you got plenty of room for the spring and you're not into that upper ball joint. Now before we do that, we're going to test the full stroke. That's all the way extended. So I'll get my jack. I can do it with one hand here. I'll get my jack. And it's quite a ways up off the control arm there. So I'm going to put a block underneath there. Got a block on it. Now I'm going to raise the control arm all the way up till it's at the end of the stroke. If it'll raise, because the whole chassis is wanting to tip back, I'm going to have to go block the back. Give me a second here. I need a jack stand on that side of the frame. I got one on the other side, I just don't have one on that side, so we'll fix it up. We'll fix that up. As my co-worker's daughter say, we can fix it. So we'll put a jack stand under there. There, now it's not going to rock, it should lift instead of rocking back on there. Okay, so now we're going to lift this control arm to bring that travel up. Okay, now you see that gap down there in between the frame and the control arm. I just go to where it would be bottomed out. If that's about as much as I'm going to get as far as lift, as far as compression on the spring going back in. So now we'll come back up here. We'll collapse the shock down a little bit. Get her lined back up with our mark here. You see, now we're kind of getting an issue on the ball joint side to where it's like really touching it right there. That's why you run through the full stroke, because if you don't and you ever collapse it down that far, you're going to tear your shock up. In fact, this is a junk shock that I just got on here for mocking it up. I don't know what side it is. It must be this side. Yeah, see right there? The shock has actually been come in contact with the control arm or a ball joint or something. That shock's ruined. Once you go past that stroke, it wants to stay down there. That's not good. We don't want that. So I think I'm going to have to compromise, like I said, a little bit on my angle and where I liked it at the bottom of the stroke, and roll it up just a little bit. And also I'm going to move it back because it's kind of bindy right there. So if we go back a little ways, right there, we can fine tune that. You're never going to hit right there. See, you're clear there. And that just moved us a little bit. So it's not going to lose too much on the other end, but we're going to mark that anyways. So I'm going to get my marker, whatever I did with it, right here. Now see, their original marks where they were, if I push it forward, it's like binding up right there. It almost actually wants to be further back. But if I go further back, now we run into more issues with that upper ball joint, and I'd have to roll it even more up to get that clearance. And now look how much it's tilted up. Okay. So let's just go ahead and, I kind of like it back there because it's moving more freely back there. So I'm going to mark it right where that is. Kind of hard to do this by watching the camera. So that right there is our new mark. Okay. So now we know we're clear on the top of the stroke, most it would ever go down. Now we're going to lower that control arm back down to all the way. You see it rolled that angle down. That's as far as it'll go down. Then we're going to go back up here. See our new mark. We're going to roll this back up. And line it up with our new mark. And then we'll look down through here again. See, we got clearance there for the spring. It's going to be close, but it's not going to hit. It's more likely you're going to compress it rather than ever be up that high. So yeah, that's where we're going to go for right there. So let me throw a couple tacks on that, and then we'll check it all out again. Okay, so I threw a couple little tacks on there. I didn't show you guys me tacking it because I don't have a special lens that blocks out in case you might get flash burn or something like that. I don't know. So anyways, you can see I got a few good little tacks on there. Nothing serious because I'm not set that that's where it's going to be until we check everything. And if we don't like it, we can easily take those tacks back off and then we can change it. So we got down on the bottom in the center and in the back corner, same on both sides, and then a couple on the other side. So now, I mean, it's on there pretty solid so we can check. Like I said, that's at its total. If you jack the car up, that's as far as it's going to go. So now let's run it through its stroke. See if we actually clear on the top. Okay, now it's lifting the car. That's as low as this is going to get. And you see right there, it's kind of hard to see, but we've got like a 16th, maybe a 16th of clearance before that ball joint's going to ever hit this. Nothing's bound up. Shock moves freely. Forward, backward, side to side, nothing's bound up. It's never going to make contact with that shock. Now, as far as our 30 degrees, we're pretty close to 30 degrees right there. Now we'll let it all the way back down. That's it. That's money. We got clearance for the spring bucket. We got clearance for the spring. We're not going to hit the ball joint. That's how I put them on, guys. I don't know how you guys do it, but I just go through and line it up and go through the stroke, make sure nothing's going to hit. Make sure nothing's ever bound up on your shocks. I mean, you can see here, nothing's bound up. Nothing's going to hit. You'll never have an issue out of that, trust me. So, even at full extension, you still got your 30 degrees. Okay, so that's that side. We'll go ahead and get that all buzzed in later. I'm going to probably get this one set where I need it and go from there. So I showed you how to do it on that side. I'm not going to show you on this side. I'm just going to get it put on and get it where it needs to be, and then I'll show you the end product. All right, thanks guys. I'll hit you in a second. Okay guys, I know I said I wasn't going to show you this side, but I ran into something a little different over here, so I figured I wanted to show you. Okay, with this mount, see this bar right here, it's angled more than that bar. See, this one's almost straight with the car. This one angles more. So what it was doing is it was wanting to take this mount and roll it back to the side, which was kind of making a bind. That's what I was telling you about, no binding. So when I put it on here, see, it wasn't sitting straight with the frame. It was sitting like this, and I didn't like that. So what I did is I went in and I back cut this groove further down through here, didn't touch this side. So now when it goes on, it lays it back where I want it. So it's vertical to the shock mount on the bottom, and you get no binding. So yeah, that's I figured I better show you guys that just in case. If you ever run into that issue, like I said, all I did was took the floppy and I clearanced this side out more than this side. So that allowed it to come back. Instead of being like this, it allowed it to set back more and align the shock. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and throw it on there, and then I'll catch you in a sec. Alrighty guys, we got that side all done. As you can see, I actually burned it all the way in because I'm sure that's where that one's gonna go. Got that all done. This little 110 miller does a pretty good job. Puts a lot of heat in it. It's got gas, MIG welder. It's good for small stuff, tubing and stuff like this, but you get into thick stuff, I wouldn't recommend using it. I think I'm about out of gas too on it. Need to go get the bottle refilled, but looking at it, a lot of penetration, a lot of heat. You can see the discoloration in there. I'm sure that's not going nowhere. So yeah, so now that's fully up. Got no binding issues, nothing. Plenty of room on the spring. So usually if it's fully compressed, that's where you're going to run into a spring issue. So that's what I'm checking is spring clearance on the upstroke. And then let's go to the full down. Full down, we might have a spring issue. We're not having no. We should be good there. It should be fine. I probably should have rolled it a little further the other way. So we might end up having to move that after all. Just depends. And also we can reverse the shock, flip it upside down so that the tube part is on the top and the shaft is down below. And then we should be fine there. We can check that really quick. Grab a tape measure here. I don't think we're going to have an issue with them this way, but just in case, so we'll know. Let me see. How hard to do with one hand. Looks like we got 10 inches of length on the shaft side. And I'm sure we probably got 9 or 10 inches on the bottom side. So if we run the tube upside down, let me set you down for just 1 second here. Okay, to the bolt, looking at 11. Oh yeah, we're plenty good there. So if we do have a spring issue, we'll be running the shocks inverted. It works the same both ways on the shocks. It doesn't matter either way. So yeah, that's good. So I hope that showed you guys something, taught you a little something. There's your little update on the car. I think, like I said, we're going to go into this back side of this firewall. I don't know if I'm going to take the whole firewall back out to do that. But we're going to get rid of all that weight behind there. Also, I don't know how they were thinking the master cylinder would work, because you can see like right here's the, like right here is where the, well, it's over here. It's kind of hard to do looking through the lens, but anyways, this right here rod goes into the master cylinder, which works the brakes. Okay, and then the master cylinder, it bolts on out here, but then if you look in here, you got that big gap in between there and where the master cylinder bolts. So if you bolt it to just here, running your bolts out through here onto the master cylinder, how are you ever going to get in there to tighten that? That just doesn't make any sense to me. And if you run them on the back side here where the holes are drilled out, down there, well, then you got all that squish area from the master cylinder here to that back plate, so all this gap is going to suck in. I don't know how that was done, what they were thinking there, but we're going to address that and fix that as well. I think what I'm going to end up doing is pulling the front whole firewall out, get all this off of it, and then when I put it back in, I'm going to get this piece lined up to here and make it one seam. That way this is flush against this backing plate and you ain't got that void area, and that will seal all this off. That way when they tech you, the firewall is seamless into the cockpit of the car. You don't have any issue. You don't have to build a piece to go out here to the outside of the fender so that you're sealing off the firewall. That makes the best sense to me. I think that's what I'm going to do. Same on this side. You can see the firewall used to extend out further out to the body line. Somebody's cut it off. You can see where that seam is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in. I'm going to attach to here with another flush sheet going all the way back to here, sealing off this side to the door. All the way out to the door here. That way, your whole firewall is completely sealed off. That's a big major thing that they look at when they tech you. They want to make sure that that firewall's sealed off. In case there's a fire under the hood, it's not getting back into the car. So I think that's the next project before we get this thing all tore apart down to just the chassis again, and then we'll send it over and have her sandblasted. We'll get you along the way for that. One of my sponsors, he actually does sandblasting, Southern Idaho Coating. He's volunteered to sandblast this for me, free of charge. And then he's got the paint that we're going to repaint it with. So yeah, should work out pretty good. I think I want to also seal off the back. I ain't decided how I'm going to seal the back yet, because all this area remains open. So you got a rear deck that comes up to the back window here, and all this area remains open. We're going to put a battery tray in over there on that corner behind the left, in front of the left rear tire. So you'd access the battery from the back side of the car by getting in, taking the wheel off and getting to the battery. That way the battery's not inside the cockpit area with you. Just not sure how I want to sheet it off. I want to keep it as light as possible. So I don't want to take a bunch of metal plating and seal off the back like that. I'm kind of leaning more toward aluminum. And if I do aluminum, I'm going to do it from the inside, and it'll be riveted on through to the back deck lid. So yeah. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope you learned something. Hope I ain't wasting your time watching my videos. Like always, man, like and subscribe. Give me a comment. Let me know you're liking the content. If I don't know you like it, then what am I doing it for, right? So, like I said, like, subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one.